Today around the cooler, the guys are talking about firearms instructors.
And then, the whole getting involved in classes or instructors who don't fully explain what their class is. Because I went looking at one class yesterday that basically said it was a basic pistol or a basic carbine or whatever, but it doesn't say what the fuck they do. And everything I've looked at was...
Where'd you see this?
I'm not going to say.
Okay. Fair enough.
But that was one of the red flags that, according to a lot of... I know from my community, they would actually say, if you can't tell me what I'm going to learn before I get there, then I ain't coming there.
So then, what did they say? And I mean, what was the criteria for the class?
Well, it would say that you're going to train on a platform. You're going to shoot this many rounds. We're going to feed you lunch. And that's pretty much it. If you can't tell me what the curriculum is,
right?
Okay, we're gonna,
or at least the basic premise of what we're going.
Yeah,
we're
gonna have this many hours of class time, this many hours on range time. At least give me something.
Sandwiches.
Well, don't you think a lot of them don't post that on a public format so that it's not copied? Because their POIs are very protective of their points of instruction.
I get that, but then at some point you've got to say, you're going to learn this. You don't have to say specifically of how you're going to learn it, but I need to know. So am I learning close quarters pistol? Am I learning defensive draw? And what am I learning in this class?
So back in 1984, I went for 9 weeks.
Okay.
And they wouldn't send you anything until you paid. Once you paid, you got your document with what to expect from each day and what you needed for each day. And it was that's basically how they sent you their instructional curriculum. They wouldn't tell you anything until you were paid up, enrolled, and approved. Then they would send you what to be ready for.
Okay, I get that, but then, okay, let's say how much was the class? What was it?
I paid $10,000 back in 1980.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. So it was a lot of money.
There had to be some presupposition as to what you were going in to go do before you paid the $10,000.
Well, it was executive protection and security. That's what that was.
But it already had a reputation.
That's what I was driving.
So when somebody tells me, "Hey, pay me X amount of dollars, and I'll show you how to do something," whatever that is.
Right.
In my head, you better be coming to the table with something that makes me want to give you that money.
You've got a reputation built.
If you're some guy who has got a bunch of tactical stuff on, and you're asking for money, and you've got no real world experience, and I'm prejudiced when I use real world experience. You're Leo. You hang around a bunch of military guys. Therefore, if you hang around long enough, therefore you are.
It rubs off.
Motherfucker, no, you are not. So, but I'm more harsh when it comes to checking somebody's credentials.
Right.
Well, and that seems to be the norm, though, because it seems like social media has given us this flood of celebrity instructors.
Yes.
It seems like, each year it gets worse.
Well, and how many, just to piggyback on that, how many have been proven, they come in with these military credentials and they're proven out that they didn't do that.
I think you're better off not stating all these things because a lot of people lie on their resume.
Right.
So why wouldn't it happen here? And then also, and it leads into stolen valor in some cases. We've had some local cases where a lot of people would fluff their resume of what their experience levels were and then would be publicly outed in a very big way.
What was that James guy? He's a YouTube guy.
Okay.
I remember
James Yeager.
Yeager.
He fell under a lot of scrutiny because of stuff like that.
Yeah, and so the heat of getting a lot of people into a class, which I'm not a fan of. I don't like taking a class with more than 4 or 5 people. When you get 10, 15 people on the line, I get extremely uncomfortable.
It becomes very dangerous in the
and
type
the
of
safety,
instruction.
Yeah, the safety issue really bothers me.
5 different ways to die.
Right. That's exactly right.
Well, Yeager went as far as to have people in front of the firearm while they were shooting on range. I've seen that live on the internet.
And how many Russian videos
have
we seen like that? Yeah.
To not bash on one guy, there are a ton of dumb
just an example.
YouTube videos of people doing stuff that is far worse than any of the worst firearm instructors out there.
Totally agree. We're just using that as an example. I mean, that's not. he's not the only one out there that's done stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think he's really gotten everything together since then too. It's really cleaned up his business.
I think he caught enough flack over
did.
that, and hey, if you can learn from your mistakes and improve, I'm all for it.
Well, the whole thing about hype, you get social media presence, and you start building an audience, and you got to be bigger, bolder, and better each time you go along. And I think that creates some of that persona with some of these instructors, that they're trying to get more looks, more likes, more viewers, and they think it equates into revenue.
So the instruction that you went and did for can you give us an idea of how did you find that and know that's what you wanted to go do? Where did you get your information?
Okay, so I won't say much about where they are or who they are, but
I don't want to know who they are. I just want to know how you knew that their credentials matched what.
So I wanted to be in executive protection. I wanted to be a bodyguard. I wanted to travel the world and just do different things. So I had a friend that was in that business, and he basically gave me a phone number to call. And the screening process is pretty incredible. You go through and you take, and this is before internet and computers. This is in the early 80s. You go through a series of personal interviews. You take some physical tests, psychological tests, and things like that. They come back and they score you, and they tell you whether they'll accept you or not. So I went and I looked through somebody that had world-class experience. They offered world-class training, and they offer placement. And so that's what I was looking for. I was looking for somebody that would do the entire A to Z thing, because I'm not a military guy. I was raised in a military family.
Right.
Spent a lot of time around it, but I never joined the military. So I wanted to get experience from somebody that had that experience, but also was connecting it to whether I was a bodyguard for a celebrity or an executive or some form or fashion, like for civilian duty.
Right.
And they were the ones at the time that were offering that. And it was
full service.
And they, to this day, still package a very good full service program. So yeah, they came highly recommended. And like today, they're still teaching. It's funny because the time they spent was mostly on controlling yourself, the mental aspect of, they wanted your personality profile. That was their biggest thing. Are you the kind of guy that they're looking for as far as good decision making? Are you in control of your mental aspect? Can you take instruction, and can you not be the guy that's up front? Because they were looking for people that.
Well, they're going to put their name on you at the end of that. So if they're going to recommend you for something, then they have their name on you. So I can see why they would want a certain caliber of person.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Even though I had a physical injury that kept me from moving forward, and it was a knee. I just could not maintain. I couldn't keep that knee. But because the physical training aspect of it was the biggest part, hand to hand and
Sweep the leg, Johnny.
Yeah, it was a lot of that. But when you walk away from that type of curriculum, you leave with a skill set that you're going to carry with you the rest of your life. And they teach you basically non-aggressive behavior,
right,
but quick resolution behavior. It's like when something presents itself, you resolve it and you move away from it, or you move away from it and you attack it when it comes at you.
So what are you looking for, Graham, when you're looking for instruction?
I don't. I have.
Granted, you've already had a lot of instruction, so
yeah. But with my instruction, about the closest I can get to the most recent any kind of instruction I got was when I went through that CHL class when I came back from deployment, and I didn't. This wasn't a criteria I was employing at the time. I was at the gun show. I was there to pick up a particular pistol that I actually had talked to you about.
Right.
Happened to find one, and it was at the table of this guy who happened to be he actually worked for like an HRT team with the sheriff's department here locally, and he happened to tell me he had a CHL class, and he was a former Marine. And I was needing a CHL class, period. He cut all the guesswork out for me.
Right.
And it satisfied my personal criteria, but not something that I went out and said, hey, I'll only go to your class if you show me your DD-214. So it just kind of worked out like that.
Right.
So, but usually those are the things that I'm kind of looking for, or I get recommendations from people within the military community who say, hey, go talk to that guy because I walked away with some valuable knowledge, therefore you will too.
How did he teach the class? I mean, was it a good class, or did you glean anything from it other than just basically, was he trying to just get you through it, or?
Yes, he got you through it because he addresses the legal aspect that you don't get in the military.
Gotcha.
And that's fine. You know, the mission is different. What you're trying to do is
you have a state requirement that you have to meet. And
right.
That's what he's instructing to. You're right.
So for me, I didn't dwell on it too much. I wasn't scoring him off a matrix or anything. Did he teach the class what it was supposed to be taught? I guess so. I mean, I
hadn't had to use it yet, so who knows?
I did everything he told me to do, and shot everything he told me to shoot, and then I walked out and I was done. So I really don't. I'm probably the not a good person to want to ask when it comes to hey, what do you look for in a firearms instructor?
Right.
Well, I think that there's a little bit of a difference between firearms instruction and meeting a state regulation instruction. His job is just to get you there to let you know what the law is.
Right.
And then he's there to score your ability to shoot at distance in a certain amount of time. And then after that, that's really all he is. He's checking the boxes at that point. And that's where a lot of people end. They end their
That's what I was driving
training
at. They go to the class.
Yeah, they
don't give you anything extra in these concealed handgun classes is what I was driving
at.
at.
So you're left to seek out further instruction. And there's several businesses out there that offer that. And, there's it's easy to get lost in this labyrinth of...
It's almost like shopping for a car at that point afterwards. It's like going to driver's ed. And then you've got to go pick a car based off of what you've learned in driver's ed.
And how many bad car decisions?
Exactly.
Same as with firearms. Mm-hmm. A lot of people will qualify with a firearm that doesn't even meet a personal safety standard. It's hard to manipulate. It's mechanically doesn't function right. And a lot of people, they go there, they just pass their tests. They don't learn how to work on malfunctions. They don't learn how to find cover. Whatever you're looking to do in the civilian world, they don't teach that. You have to go somewhere else for that.
I would be curious to see the percentage of what people take this concealed handgun class and then seek no further instruction other than, even if it's on their own, even if they're whatever level it's to. I'd be interested to see and know the percentage of people that get the class, buy a gun, and then stick it on their person and never think about it.
That is a good question because the way I see it is they take their class and then they're basically told to sign up for this insurance law representation program.
Right.
Those are the 2 steps they take. Granted, it may be helpful to have that, but you won't need representation in many cases if you've actually learned some additional skills that may keep you from getting into a situation.
It's not an easy... It's not necessarily an easy skill set to learn because you're learning it under pressure. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that can't handle that kind of instruction, that they can't learn under, shall we say, under fire. Not everybody's cut out to do that. So
that's a good point because, one of the things I look for in an instructor is somebody that doesn't just stand there and scream at people and run them through drills all day long. There's a lot of physical capability and inability that people have. A good instructor would recognize that and train to the shooter's limit.
I can learn it both ways. You can be screaming at me. I've learned as you get older and get some maturity on you, you learn how to disseminate that information when somebody's screaming at you and how to take that creatively. I think women, for a large part, probably don't receive information well that way. And I don't mean that as a negative slant toward women. I just know that very few people, even there's a lot of men that can't take that instruction that way because they feel under some sort of personal attack.
It's funny because I had just kind of like the opposite. It seems like the females that I've instructed or worked with actually picked it up faster. But you have to remember it's your training style that helps bridge that gap.
Well, and that's what I'm driving at. I'm saying the yelling. I think women pick up. The way they assimilate information, you can give them a lot of information all at one time, as long as it's clear, cognitive. I think they receive that information better in a clear tone, rather than screaming like they do in the military.
Well, the military. Sam made a point earlier that I thought was really good. When you talk about the instruction, each group is going to train a certain way.
Right.
And he's looking for qualifications and testimonials, basically, that give this person hey, I made the right choice, or no, this is somebody I want to stay away with or stay away from. I think that happens where a lot of people will go to an internet search and they'll pull up whoever is coming up on the internet, and they go look at their website, and then they take the class.
Right.
And it's kind of sad in many ways, because I think they approach a class that really wasn't for them because they didn't have enough information.
Right.
And you can't take Susie Homemaker, who went and bought a pistol, took her LTC class, and then run her through military-style drills.
Right.
That makes no sense. So what a good instructor should be is somebody that recognizes that and says, Susie Homemaker, this is the kind of class I teach. This might not be the class for you, but I know a guy that teaches this way. Because what we get a lot of guys out there that, whether they're military or not, they take on the persona of being a military-style instructor,
right,
or even a Leo instructor, and they're not. There's a lot of posers out there that go out there, and because they're an aggressive, they dress in tactical clothes,
right,
and they run this little slick website, and they surround themselves with those type of people, they feel they're qualified to instruct in that way. And it's not good for the average citizen.
That's exactly what I was driving at. You're not really looking for that as an LTC person. If you've got your carry permit, you really don't want to look for that. And that's what I was driving at. I found, to clarify, I want to clarify my point. I think females take instruction better than most males. Males come in with a preconceived notion of how things should go. A lot of times I've found this when teaching friends to shoot. They have this preconceived notion. Whereas I can get females in there, one, they assimilate information all at one time. So when I'm instructing them, when I'm saying, this is the basics of shooting, they can take all that information in at one time. Whereas a guy, you've got to break him down point by point almost and say, this is what you're doing wrong here. This is what they take a lot longer to teach to shoot properly and handle the firearm correctly.
They do, but you're looking for an instructor that can also learn from the feedback he's getting from his students.
Sure.
If you're sitting there and you're instructing somebody and you're running into a brick wall, you may have to redirect your style. A lot of these guys walk in with a canned class, and they walk in with this predetermined curriculum that they're going to run you through.
Right.
That's not instruction. Okay, that's a day at the range with some guy showing you stuff.
Right.
True instruction is they look at you, they look at your style, they correct your flaws, they make sure you're safe, and then they start training to your failure point. Once they get to your failure points, they train to the next failure point. But you have to go in leaps and hurdles. You can't just run somebody through a class and say, hey, you need to shoot 5,000 rounds today, or 500 rounds, whatever that number.
When people go looking for instructors, they really don't even know how to kind of construct a list of what to look for in an instructor. So they choose an instructor based on what they think they need to know about what makes a good instructor. For me, an instructor, and I don't care whether it's firearms, somebody who's teaching you how to sew or playing a guitar, is an instructor needs to know how to adjust their method of instruction for the student that they're with.
Right.
So when it takes a heavy hand because that person is more accepting of that style of instruction, then that's how you proceed. And it can vary from student to students who are 5 feet away from each other. You have to be able to adjust that quickly.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, your curriculum has to be imparted to the people who paid your fee.
That's right. To me, that's the mark of the best instructor.
Yes.
What you're talking about right there, and that's what I wanted to get at, is to me, you have to know your student. That's what.
And the guy,
you have to know people, and you have to know how to help people pass their barriers.
And if you get an instructor who thinks that they missed their calling as a drill sergeant, and that's their only method of instruction, as kind of how you stated, that's the guy I'm going to avoid. You can be the rock star in your own head, but I'm not going to sit here and watch you. I'm not going to be a witness to it.
Well, the fact that screaming at somebody and poking them with a stick and making them run through these archaic...
Putting a bag over their head. Here's the bag, I'm going to choke you.
Yeah, these archaic, silly drills that are literally dangerous for the beginner.
Right.
It just makes no sense, and it's irresponsible.
No real world application.
No real application whatsoever.
That's the other thing that I'm looking for when I take a class is... I'm not looking to leap and bound to a target. As a civilian, that's not what I'm here to do. when I look for a class, I want a guy that's going to say, when you enter a room, I want you looking for this type of concealment, this type of cover. The first thing you should do is be looking for exits and way out. I'm not there to engage in a gunfight where I'm rushing to the front to save people. I'm there to save my life and whoever's with me and get out of the way as fast as possible.
You're talking about progressive level training now. So when you look at progressive level training, that's exactly might be the guy you're looking for. If that's the instruction you're seeking, you definitely want to find that guy that teaches that. But it's progressive, and that's what we want people to understand, is that you need to crawl before you walk, before you run with this stuff. And because you're dealing with something that's it could be potentially very dangerous.
Right.
And also the instructors that are out there are creating mindsets that are unhealthy for some people, because they're putting you through maybe stress that you might be ready for later in instruction, but not so early on. And you have to measure that. And that's what a good instructor will do with a good curriculum. He'll run you through the basics, make sure you're functionally safe, make sure you're making good decisions.
Check your draw. They want to check your draw.
And your physical ability, because not everybody's in great shape. And so when you smoke somebody on a gun or a firing range, and you continue to push them through a drill that is very dangerous, you get tripping and falling, things that are going on. There's a lot of things that can happen. And I think that the people that are taking classes, if you take a progressive approach to it, where you get fundamentally sound, then you go look and do the fun stuff.
Right.
Sure, there's plenty of people out there that'll show you the fun stuff, and those classes are great to go to. But you have to minimally be in shape, have the safety aspect down, and understand your equipment and how to manage malfunctions and all the things that go with it. And a good instructor will make sure he's checked those boxes before you move on to that next level.
There's a lot of classes out there that really they're advertised as, basic shooter classes, when really they're just 8-hour long real life Call of Duty sessions. And
that's a great way to put it.
The thing is that the instructor for these type of classes, I think, does a real disservice to the paying public for doing for conducting a class that follows kind of a curriculum like that. Those are the ones that I will, when people ask reviews about those, I'm going to give some of the
harshest
reviews.
This is what it is. Well, I'd say this is what it is. Are you looking to do that? I mean, that's the kind of stuff I want to know before I sign up for a class.
If you want to go to a class with the instructor that likes to wear the
511 gear.
511
I got
stuff,
my plate carrier on in my 511 gear.
and you want to listen to a douchebag preach to you about gun safety for 8 hours,
right?
Then you get what you deserve. You should have been a little bit more diligent about picking your instructor.
Right. I'd be happy with an instructor that taught gun safety for 8 hours straight. That doesn't even happen.
No.
A lot of these guys, they do a safety brief,
and then they throw you right into it.
And they throw you right into it. And when I've witnessed some instructors, and I've taken some classes, and it's funny because some of them do a very good job in one area, and they're completely a mess on the other side of it. But the one thing that I see that's pretty common is, as the class goes on, you were talking about an 8-hour class, which I think is too long.
Yes.
I really think that's a way too long amount of time to keep somebody on the range. You start to see a degradation of some of the safety standards, like what's the hot line and what's the cold line. Should there be loaded weapons behind a certain point? Should you be even touching weapons when somebody else is on the range?
Well, especially when you've got the larger classes. That's generally where you see that breakdown that I've found when I've been in classes. Mm-hmm. If you've got 15, 20 people on the line, that's
boredom
where that
stuff.
That's right. Boredom sets in. Yeah. People want to touch their guns. They want to fiddle with it. They want to talk, not pay attention. Mm-hmm. And that's where you end up with these accidents that you see online where people get shot.
Yeah, unintentional accidents are just that. They're an accident that nobody was intending to perpetuate, but but
it boils down to somebody did something that was outside the grounds of safe.
And you had unintended consequences.
Yeah, and the instructor basically got beyond his capabilities
to handle the calls.
And I think a lot of that is for some of these instructors, if they're a full-time instructor, they're pressured to make as many classes and pull up as much revenue as they possibly can. I personally am the other way. If I work with somebody, it's generally one-on-one. I think that's better. If I go for instruction, I'll go ask that instructor, hey, what would it cost me to take a one-on-one class with you? I get more out of it. he gives me his full attention, and I get to correct a lot of mechanical flaws that may have crept back into my initial training. And I think that for me, that's the better way to go. I'm kind of with Sam. I like to go with guys that are known shooters that have a good background, whether they're military or competitive. I tend to go towards the military and competitive type guys.
Right.
And then I adapt it into what I think a civilian shooter should be. The Leo side, it's fun because I have some Leo friends that are good shooters that we shoot, but they're beyond. They're different. They're specialty guys.
Right.
And so I think that it's
and
fun.
again, those are fun classes
They
to learn.
are.
If you can go hit some of these specialty classes and realize ahead of time, this is what I'm going for. This is entertainment. And that's a lot of times people have a hard time separating, okay, this is fun, this is practical, this is fun, this is practical.
Right.
And that's why I tend to stay away. If I want to have fun, I'm going to go have fun on my own. I'm going to find a range where I can get out and play games or whatever it is that I'm looking to do. And by play games, I mean
competitive shooting games.
Exactly.
Like we do sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when I want I try to keep my instructions as real as possible and as practical as possible. I'm looking for the most practical bit of knowledge that I can obtain. To get out and say that I need to run 500 rounds in a class, to me, is absurd.
Right.
I can learn so much more from you showing me and telling me, let's walk these drills. Let's walk these drills down rather than fire a bunch of rounds. Let me walk it down 10 times without shooting.
Right.
I gain so much more information from
and that's a good point, because a lot of the instruction that I had early on, we never fired a round. It was blue gun. It was typically blue gun, and it was mechanics and decision making.
That's right, and you learn that. You're learning that as you do it, and then when you go to shoot, then it's all mechanics at that point. Then the mechanical side of it can take over for you.
The gunshot came down to bang,
exactly.
Bang, bang. I mean, literally,
if
and when you laugh, they're like, "This isn't funny."
Right.
This is your shot. You make the shot. You say bang, and it really pulls you back in, because that's a good point. It leads into instruction with a deadly weapon that can drift off into a big problem. You're still having something that can kill somebody.
Right.
And when you're shooting, and you're shooting in a game type, or I shouldn't even say game, scenario is the better way. A shoot, no shoot, and things like that. The consequence of a decision is the opportunity for an instructor to really fix a problem. Instead of just letting you burn 20 rounds at a target and you make a missed shot, like with me early on, if we made a missed shot, you stopped.
Right, and you're going to break it down as to what you did. Yeah.
And he's asking me questions. What were you thinking? What was your indicator? And he walks through the steps. And that again is where an instructor with experience will walk you through that, and you walk away completely comfortable with what you learn.
Well, you have something to think about at that point. Again, you're going to learn through your failures. Obviously, that's why you have them. But if they can instruct you in your failures, that's what you're looking for.
Yeah,
to me,
they
that's
help you
really
correct it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So on the other side, you get these guys. I call them entertainment instructors, and I'm talking about high round count.
Right.
A lot of chest bumping and stuff like that. My concern is when you load up and get in your car and you're on your way home, and something happens. What's the mindset of your student?
You're amped up at that point.
Yeah.
I'm going to handle this like I'm going to bound to the target and murder 6 people out in front of me.
Yeah, and for me, it's I'm glad you put that bounding.
So all those classes really should end with a nice glass of Earl Grey tea.
Earl Grey tea and a scone and some classical music. Honestly, what's really funny is we laugh at that, but a good instructor at the end of the class would probably close with saying, "Hey, look, this
go rub one out. You'll feel better.
You'll feel a lot better." Yeah. Here's a couple mag dumps. Get it out of your system right now. Get it out of your system before you get in your car.
That's what we're calling it now. Is we're calling them mag dumps.
Mag dumps. Yeah.
I like that.
Well, it's because it's our right to do this. We're protected under the Constitution, and there's a responsibility to that. The argument I get tired of hearing is that this stuff doesn't need to be out there, and yeah, it does. That's the responsible part of the right.
Right.
Is understanding that you have that right, you need to invest in that right, and you need to protect that right. And to abuse that right leaves you subject to scrutiny and possibly losing that right. And I think that as civilians that are tasked by the Constitution to do these things, it's up to us to get that instruction. It's up to us to be safe, and it's up to us to make good decisions. and not allow people that don't make good decisions dictate how our life is determined after that.
The thing is, if we didn't have firearms, we would be having just as an intense discussion about some other type of self-defense instruction.
Yeah,
and we would expect the same kind of level instruction.
Sure.
And
whatever it is.
Whatever that is, right.
When you break it down, it's really just a tool.
Right.
Anything that you use is a tool.
So I'm looking forward to the 1 ton to 3/4 ton truck instruction that is full auto with a high capacity fuel tank.
Right.
And
a bumper stock.
And a bumper stock. Because that's the next level, people.
Exactly. That's where you go.
That's all for today's podcast. Thanks for listening to The Cooler.